All right, now let's take another test. The 7 health factors for longevity. This comes out of research from several years ago, and it's pretty simple. It's just how many of these things do you do every day or a majority of days? So all you do is you're just going to count up the number of these things you do each day. And the first one's that you get between 6.5 to 8 hours of sleep a day. There's a lot of, we put in a range there because they know that it's around 8 hours, but there's some new research showing that some people don't need 8 hours. They need 6.5 is the low end, 8's the good end, and if you get much over 9, that's kind of on the high end where you get a little too much sleep. So how do you get 6.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night? To not eat unhealthy foods between meals. So in other words, we recommend that you snack on healthy foods, but do you snack on unhealthy foods? So if you do snack on it, you don't get the point on unhealthy foods. Do you eat breakfast regularly? Do you maintain a proper body weight? And that's again up for some question, but are you happy with your body weight? Do you exercise regularly? So we know that nobody's getting that one, at least if you're honest on your poll. So it's greater than or equal to 150 minutes a week of exercise. And then moderate to no use of alcohol. Since that's up for debate, a lot of times we're going to go with 2 drinks or less a day, and no, they're not cumulative. You don't get to save them up and have 14 on Saturday. It's 2 a day, and that seems to be the general consensus right now. And the other one's to don't smoke or use any tobacco products. So we're going to go back over. I'm going to do another poll real quick to see how many of those factors do you have. So do you have 0 to 2 of those factors? Do you have 3 of them? Do you have 4, 5, or do you have 6 or 7? I'll give you guys a couple seconds here to take that. Looks like most of them are in. All right, cool. So it looks like we have some people that are 0 to 2. We have some 3s, 4s, and 5s, and no 6s or 7s, which again is probably about right. So we close out of that now. Thank you for playing along. So now we're going to go on to our graph to explain this. So now what you're going to do is find your age on the left-hand column. If you are currently 40 years old, so if you're 40 years old and you do all 7 of those habits, which nobody did, but if you did, your health age would actually be 25. If you do 0 to 2 of those habits and you're 40 years old, your health age is 58. If you're 60, I like to point out the 60-year-olds because some major stuff happens, right? So if you're 60 years old and you do all 7 of those things every day, your health age is actually 45. That's the age of your body. If you do 0 to 2 of those things at 60 years old, your health age is actually 85. So you see the sliding scale. The older we get, the more impact those simple 7 things have on our lives. So kind of an interesting graph. We like to use this. Health age is becoming more of the new predictor that we like to look at instead of chronological age, and it accounts for why we see 50 years old, people of different age that are the same age but look so different. It's because of their health. So what's the right program? So, okay, great. We're all fired up. We want to go out there and we want to get on a program. But what's the right program for you? Well, these are the principles of conditioning. These have been around for a lot of years and they still hold true. That we've got to make sure that all of these things should be part of any program you're considering doing. The first one is safety. There should be emphasis on proper technique of doing the exercises. Without proper technique, you'll end up getting injured. And while we appreciate that on the physical therapy side of our business, it's not good for you, the client. So technique is vital. The other thing that's important in safety is understanding the difference between soreness and pain. When you do something, your muscles might get a little stiff and a little sore. That's just, you've done something. But if it's painful, or especially if there's joint pain, then you're doing too much. And if you have pain around your joints, that's a sign that you're overloading them, and the joints will break down and you'll get injured. So that leads us into when do you push harder or when do you back off? A lot of that is understanding the chronological age versus not only your health age, but also your training age is something else we like to look at, which just means how many years have you worked out? How many years have you been involved in sports? We could have two 40-year-old people, one who's been involved for sports since they were 5 years old or been involved in exercise. Their training age is 35. We could have somebody else who did PE in school back in high school and can hardly remember it and got away with as little as possible. Their training age is like 4. You can't take those two people and put them on the same program because one's body's used to movement and one isn't. So they have to progress at different levels. The next thing is warming up and cooling down. Every program you're in should have a warm-up period and a cool-down period, because warm-up is just preparing your body and your mind for training. It takes 2 to 3 minutes for our heart rate to get up to the work level. So that's that thing when you first go out and you're going to go for a walk or go for a jog or going to start exercising, and those first 2 to 3 minutes feel like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. This is just too hard. My body doesn't want to do this. That's your body going through the warm-up phase. And then at 3 minutes, we click into aerobic and can burn aerobic, and our body temperature is warmed up. We can use oxygen to help us exercise. So that's when we get in that state where all of a sudden it becomes easier until you push it too hard and then you find the other end. But so realize that your body has to warm up to get ready. Our bodies are mostly water, so we're very viscoelastic. So once we warm up, our system works better. And then at the end, it's important that you return your body back to the normal state. So you don't want to just go hard and then all of a sudden just go sit on the couch, because your body's got to ramp back down. So make sure that any program you're looking at has both those components. The other thing that's important is motivation. And I don't mean motivation as in going and doing it, but continue doing it. And for that, there's a couple things. One is varying your training program. So the program should change over time. That's a concept known as periodization, or periods of time. So there should be changes in the program. It shouldn't be the same program from now till Kingdom Come. So change it. And the other one, I think, for motivation is understanding motor control real quick, motor learning. So whenever we're going to learn something new, our body turns into, we go through these cycles. So the first phase of learning something new is called cognitive, or that's the learning level. That's when we feel like a robot, where it's like you have to think through every piece of the program. So realize that's normal to feel awkward and robotic. That's the first phase of learning something new. If you go long enough, it becomes the associative phase, where you start to decrease the errors and it starts to feel a little better. And then eventually you get to autonomic, where it just becomes automatic. You just do it. It's like when you first learn to ride a bike, right? At first you're on the bike and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. You're falling off every few times. And then it got a little better where you could ride longer distances. And then it becomes autonomic or automatic, where you just jump on the bike and go. And you don't even think about it anymore. So a lot of activities like that. Overload's another important principle. So there's a thing called the SAID principle, which is the specific adaptation to imposed demands. Basically, our bodies will adapt to the stresses we place upon them very specifically. So it adapts over time, though. So if you put too much on too fast, you will get hurt. Too much stress causes our body to break down. The right amount of overload will actually cause our body to build up, and that's the goal. So Stephen Covey quote, but motivation is a fire from within. If someone else tries to light that fire under you, chances are it will burn very briefly. So that's just saying that we've got to be internally motivated. Somebody else can try to give you the motivation. But if the program's set up the right way, it should be motivating, not demotivating, meaning that you're at the right level and you're progressing at the right level. Consistency is also important. Consistency of training is vital for accommodation to occur. You can't work out and exercise once every so often and get a result. It's consistent exercise over time, and then our body can accommodate to it. And it's actually, think about compounding interest, like saving up money. It's the same thing with exercise. At the end of a day, if one person exercises, one person doesn't, they're not very much different. But every day that you exercise, it's like making a deposit into your savings account. And eventually, if it's an interest-bearing savings account, you get compounding interest, where you start to gain massive returns. Well, it's the same thing with exercise. We don't get a big gain until we get down the road. So if you do your exercise every day like you're supposed to, or every 3 times a week, at the end of a year, you're going to be substantially different than somebody who hasn't done anything for that year. So remember compounding interest. And again, progression, it needs to be gradual, small steps. There shouldn't be any big jumps. There should be small steps, and it should be a logical plan. And it has to be within the individual's ability to adapt. And then, of course, proper technique is vital to minimize compensations. And we need to minimize the use of momentum, or we're not strengthening what we want to strengthen. This is Milo of Kertonen. For those of you who don't know, supposedly the inventor of progressive resistive exercise. The story from the old times was that he started carrying around a calf when he was a boy, and then kept carrying it every day. And when the calf became a bull, he was still able to carry it. So we credit Milo for inventing weightlifting, and that was back in the Greek days. So thank you, Milo. We also need to look at intensity when we're talking about exercise programs. Intensity is much more important than quantity. We got to realize that people want to do these overly intense programs, but if you're not able to keep up with that, you're going to break down. So it's more important to understand how your body reacts to the exercise, and that's the greater percentage of maximum aerobic capacity, the less time and activity can be performed. That's the medical mumbo jumbo for if you push too hard, you can't keep doing it. So everybody knows if I go out and sprint as hard as I can't run a marathon, because I can sprint as hard as I can for only about 10 seconds, 20 seconds max. And then you can't sprint, and you cannot keep that capacity. Everybody knows that, and yet every year for New Year's resolutions, we go sprinting out of the gate and then are confused when we run out of energy 10 seconds, 20 seconds into it. So you have to understand that that's actually a physiological phenomenon, that we're set up that way. The reason that people can go run ultra marathons is they're running it at a pace where their body can keep going at that pace. Of course, they're in great shape at that level, but that's part of it. So the maximal heart rate is achieved at the same time the maximal aerobic capacity, which just means that same thing. When you hit your max heart rate, you're at your max aerobic capacity. There's no way to trick your body. So how do you figure that out? Well, it's 220 minus your age is how you figure out your max heart rate in the simplest form. And then your training zone should be 65 to 85% of that. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because of our age. As we get older, our heart doesn't work as efficiently as it does when we're younger. So we got to make sure from a safety standpoint that we're not pushing our heart beyond its capacity. The other thing you'll see people use is an RPE chart, or rate of perceived exertion. The original one went from 6 to 20 because it matched heart rate. The new ones are going from 1 to 10. But basically, it's like if you're a 1, and 1's like very light activity, anything other than sleeping, so watching TV. So you can do that for hours. Well, hopefully not, but we'll change those habits. But you can do that. There's no limit. When you get up to a 10, that's maximal effort. You can only sustain that for a limited amount of time, and then you're done. So that correlates along with your heart rate, the same thing. When you push it to the top 10, you can only sustain it for a very short amount of time. And then specificity, we already talked about a little bit, but it's important that you identify your specific goals, and that the program is designed to address all components of fitness: strength, flexibility, cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory, endurance. So you need to have a little bit of everything. And then minimal stress means that you want to use the minimal amount of stress necessary to get accommodation, so that you're not breaking the body down, you're actually building it up. And then avoid overtraining. Too many people are overtraining. Well, not too many people, because not too many of them will get it. But if you push your body over and over again, your body will actually start to break down. Then you'll hear about things like called rhabdomyolysis, which is a disease where your muscles actually just start to break down. There's overtraining, which will lead to mental burnout. This little scale is the relationship of biomotor abilities. In other words, it's a triangle, and this is actually where the TERRIOFit triangle came from. It was these old triangles of strength, endurance, and speed. And basically how it works is that we know that strength and endurance are on opposite ends of the spectrum, so everything kind of goes in between them. The more it's strength-oriented, the further it gets away from endurance. Same thing as endurance and speed kind of separate each other, and flexibility and coordination are kind of the underlying aspects of